Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to be able to share my thoughts with you today. Sadly, I don't have as much practical experience as Mr. Vitali. I believe we stand on two opposites of the same spectrum. I am probably in the minority here because I represent the public administration system. I am a lawyer, and you are designers, architects, probably project managers, beta science representatives. So we don't have that much in common at first glance, but let me show you otherwise. I'd like to show you an administrative and legal point of view of BIM, and I can share my initial experiences. I've been in the public tendering procedure for the past 20 years. Everything started in the early 2000s. I ran tenders as high as close to 2 billion zlotys. I remember this pilot project that I was involved in, which now dwarfs by comparison to what we have today. But back then we thought we were actually in our heyday. My first BIM experience reaches back to 2014. I worked as a manager and a co-owner of a design company. My ambitions were very high. I had many friends among architects and designers, and we decided to enter the British market. My colleagues talked about different troublesome areas of using BIM with regard to entering the British market. They said that we would have a hard time communicating in English, but these were just technicalities, so I wasn't really interested in hearing all of that because I took a legal standpoint. I remember another situation when we ran into a clash with our conflict. We were involved in the A10 highway project, and I was asked to do a teleconference with one of our partners. As a lawyer, I prepped up for this conversation. We were ready to juggle the balls to see what would happen. And then I got a lot of insight because I learned that I have people from Kraków, from Warsaw, and people from England participate in this conference. We had the investor online, and the main contractor was there as well. And we were all part of the same conference done online, and we were looking at the same project. It dawned on me that it was very different from the Polish reality that would require normally to print everything out, but we were doing everything online. We didn't even have to use the plotter. Everything was done electronically. We were discussing a project that was actually present there in the electronic form. That was one situation that opened my eyes. And the second situation was when I learned that our material progress in one of the projects was 65%. The engineers said that the actual figure was 38%. We learned that when we used BIM, we could not catch up. And when we would work in 2D, we wouldn't be able to catch up and manage all the delays. As a legal advisor, I realized that BIM is something of great potential in planning and execution, and then management. What I'd like to do today is to share a few thoughts that I've had for some time. It's been 5 years since those days. And today I represent the public administration, specifically speaking the Public Procurement Office, and BIM has somehow made inroads into my area of interest. I'd like to focus on two aspects. First of all, I want to talk you through BIM and the Polish public procurement law. Second of all, I'd like to address the issue of BIM throughout Europe so that we can make reference to other countries and compare. Then I'd like to talk about the Polish reality and finally address the future. Let's look at the item number 1, BIM in the Polish tendering law. Article 10e talks about how BIM tools can be used in the tendering procedure. The current law under Article 10e says that when we are commissioning work or running a contest, we can require these BIM-related tools to be used as long as availability is provided. As the main investor, we have to make these tools available. The awareness is already out there, but we have to make sure that the solutions from 2016, when this regulation entered into force, would be available now, because back then they were not available. So question number 1 is, do we have or do we not have roadblocks for BIM to be implemented in Poland? From the viewpoint of the Polish tendering law, we see no roadblocks. In the commissioned work and in its description, you can set forth a requirement for BIM to be implemented. When you draft the terms and conditions for what the experts have to deliver and what all stakeholders have to use, you can put the usage of BIM technology. There are different legal forms of running tenders, and in some of them, BIM or the utility of BIM can be put forth as a requirement to take part in the tendering procedure. The awarding of a tendering work can also be dependent on whether the contractor knows how to use BIM and is capable of doing that. The terms and conditions of the execution of the awarded work can also include this obligation of the usage of BIM. Currently, as of 2020, this law only details how contracts should be made, but these are only guidelines. From my viewpoint, though, if we are using BIM tools from the very beginning, we should keep doing that until the very end of the investment process, until the execution of the investment is complete, and then further on during the use phase. So my point is that we should start, it would do well for us to start using BIM throughout the entire life cycle of a project. Why am I bringing this up? Because I have seen from practice as a representative of the public authorities situations where investors claim to be knowledgeable in BIM and to be ready to use this technology. The tender is done, and when the work is commissioned, the entity awarded the contract is putting that responsibility on the subcontractor and is not knowledgeable as they had claimed. It seems that some information is missing at that point. I have seen many such situations of people saying that they want to use BIM, but then put that responsibility on others or leave it in writing and not put it into practice. Speaking about there being no roadblocks for the implementation of BIM in the procurement tendering, I want to bring up a meeting that I had 2 weeks ago when a comparison was done between the public-private partnership as it is used in Poland and in other countries. In England, 15% of investment is done in such a public-private partnership form, maybe because BIM was implemented way back, and since 2015 it's been obligatory. And in investments in the public-private form, where the time scope is at least 20 years, the implementation of BIM will be delivered from the beginning to very end and will be exhaustive. I've analyzed various countries that use public-private partnerships to a large extent. BIM in those countries plays a big role. I don't know that if when we talk about the 15% figure, if BIM is used in all of those cases, but the statistic is quite high.
When it comes to being ready for BIM and what we have as of today, I will allow myself to show you this readability for BIM into international and national. A month ago, I participated in the 4th Construction Forum in Poland on the 10th of October, and I have seen the study of PM market experts. It was a study, among others, on BIM. And the company has done a survey among construction companies and execution companies, asking what the top 10 tendencies or trends are in the coming 10 years. And apart from prefabs or AI or certificates, BIM was also selected as one of the most important ones. And it was one of the top 10 trends. What's quite interesting is another research where it was pointed out that among 15% of average and large companies in Poland, BIM is being used. They have also used a very interesting name, because all the companies who have a revenue of up to 50 million, then the BIM penetration is around 50%. So they use some elements, they do something, but it's still quite a high ratio. The research also showed that all the BIM solutions are being used more when it comes to bigger objects and not linear investments. When it comes to the execution market and public procurement entities, our experience shows that the execution market is now preparing itself for the application of BIM. When it comes to public investors, there is still not enough knowledge or a practical application of BIM. It's still at a very low level, and my observations suggest that I think that commercial solutions have to apply BIM, and then these best practices and uses will then be translated into public entities. What does it look like abroad? I have chosen a few countries to present it to you. There is no obligation to use BIM in Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, Lithuania, Slovakia, Slovenia, and Hungary. So in these countries, these solutions are not being applied. I'm not talking about countries like the United Kingdom, where it is. In Ireland, the adventure with BIM started around 2012, 2013. The situation was stabilized, a roadmap was adapted, a national council, National BIM Council was appointed, and as of today, there is no obligatory requirement to use BIM. The Ireland is more a proponent of a more step-by-step approach, which is depending not only on the sector but also on the cost of this investment. Italy has taken a step further. They are also trying now to implement BIM instruments. In 2025, BIM has to be obligatory in public administration. When it comes to Germany, our neighbor, you probably have more knowledge about it, and you have probably better studied the situation there. For example, from the point of view of the new airport that is still being constructed. And it turns out that also social consultations have been carried out, and they also decided to implement BIM. Starting 2020 and 2021, there is going to be a BIM requirement in all public investments. Spain hasn't introduced the obligation. There is no time frame for it to be in place. There have been a few investments where BIM has been implemented, and they have also came up with a website which is called s.bim, and the use of this portal is connected to the fact that BIM is now being used widely on the commercial market, and the website shows examples, commercial examples, which can serve as best practices for the public administration, but as of now there is no general plan of introducing this measure. Now, Poland, in our office we have carried out 3 initiatives since March this year. The first initiative was a meeting with a few procuring entities who have used BIM in their investments in order to share some experience and ideas. We have also organized such a meeting for those entities who are extremely interested in the subject and who will have to implement it. The second event was when we asked one of the big architecture companies who also execute their projects in BIM to show to the public administration on a real project, for example, a road project, a railway project, and also network project. And they have shown us how they were building their referencing models, the BOQs, and so on. So the employees of our office now have a sense what BIM can be applied for. The third meeting, in which probably some of you have participated, was a BIM Hyde Park, where we were discussing if this is the right direction, if we should go this way, and it seems to me it is. I think it's not only all about the speed, but taking the right turn. When it comes to Polish investments, the Polish power grids are now preparing for the implementation of BIM, and they are going to use it in the future. The Academy of Fine Arts in Warsaw also applied it. The Copernicus Science Center also applied it. The Poznań Architecture Academy also used BIM modeling. Also the Gateway Zatora, the Cogiteon Science Center in small Poland, the Center of Music in Krakow, the Wyspiański Museum, and the Polish Railways. So these are probably some of the initiatives of the BIM initiatives that we should enumerate today. Also, when it comes to initiatives that are now being implemented, it also is connected to the article that I have shown you, the Article 10b. There are a few changes in the new public procurement law. Some of them are right, but the new public procurement law is also there, and BIM is now a part of it. We have now came up with new tools which can be used before the public procurement procedure, if the procurement is needed, how it should be implemented, if it should be done in private-public partnership, what mode should be applied, and what tools should be used. So we have created modules, and we have also implemented this element of contract evaluation. If a public procurement contract has been executed and something went wrong, there should be a follow-up report that shows what didn't work, why it didn't work, and what kind of changes should be applied for such things not to be there in the future. We have also adopted the law. We have the item 2019 in the new public procurement law, which is concerning it. Also, the purchasing policy of the country. Our country, as of now, has no purchasing policy. There were only competition procedures. There were 202 billion zloty spent last year, and we know what we want to buy, which solutions we want to promote. And we think that such policy should be also adopted by the states, where there are clear rules for that. And we should know that we really count on innovation, the green economy or sustainability, and that we also want BIM in our projects. The last initiative is, so to say, electronization of public procurement procedures. We are now striving to really compute all these bids, and we are trying, as of 1st of January 2020, that these tenders are being submitted electronically. And my managerial challenge, so to say, from the Polish government was to create a good, equal and seamless public procurement law. And 2020 for me is the year to prepare this platform for electronic purchases. In 2020 or 2021, probably you won't remember about some of these projects, but 2022, as long as I'm still working for this office, then I will probably want this BIM policy to be properly implemented. What are the challenges? You probably remember the report, the KPMG report from 2016 regarding BIM, where we are, what should be done. It's 2019 already. Some companies have already invested in BIM. Some assumptions from that time are probably no longer relevant, but what is really important is to prepare the public procurers to work with BIM tools, because commercial entities know that, and when it comes to administration, it will not only require huge investment outlays, but also a lot of training, because they have to be prepared for it. And the costs are, of course, here to take into consideration. When it comes to entities who should be interested in BIM, it is, of course, the Public Procurement Office, but we are now taking a lot of action, and we are probably the leader. But other entities are, of course, the Ministry of Development. Ministry of Development has existed for a week, because previously it was the Ministry of Entrepreneurship and Technology, and I've been even joking with Ms. Emilewicz, the minister, that the ministry is changing. The next year is going to be the year of technology and electronization and BIM. So the minister really understood what I meant. The Ministry of Digitization, I think that the Ministry of Digitization does not realize what a huge potential BIM has, what kind of data we can collect, how we can work on these databases, and that it is very close to SIM or to smart cities. And I think that many people simply do not realize that. The Ministry of Environment, why? Because they are really using the EU funds for very different projects, like sewage projects and so on. And all these projects also can be seen as public-private partnership. And I think that BIM should also be included here. Also, the Office of Technical Inspection and the Center for EU Transport Projects, which also checks all these investments, the General Directorate for National Roads and Motorways, and the Polish Railways. These are all stakeholders who should actively work for the implementation of BIM. What about the future? I think that we are only at the beginning. I think we won't manage it if we don't cooperate with non-governmental entities which are engaged in this development. If they don't want to create open software and collaborate, then it won't be possible. So the cooperation with all these entities is surely essential. I think that the basis for this cooperation should be also best practices in terms of BIM. The investor has to realize that BIM can make their work smoother, what roles can be taken up, what are the tasks of the investor, of the general contractor, and so on, and of course the end user of the investment. The future of BIM, obligatory solutions. I think we are not ready as of now for obligatory solutions. The KPMG report evaluated the cost of BIM implementation at a few billion zloty, but the Polish budget does not allow to fork out so much money for this purpose. Another question would be, do designers or contractors need BIM? Even though you are quite open to innovation, very open to innovation, I have a lot of colleagues that also are extremely open to that, but some of them will prefer to work in a traditional way, and they won't need BIM, and they will be 100% satisfied by traditional solutions. Or maybe if we have to do everything in BIM and our staff and our employees are not prepared for that, then, well, we can end up in quite a pickle. So the cooperation with you and the cooperation with the contractors is extremely important here. Collaboration with different organizations who are interested in BIM, also showing to all the public stakeholders the long-term benefits of BIM implementation. And we are now before the 5-year financial framework, which may allow us to find some stakeholders who will be interested in participating here. Of course, we need very well thought and long-term planning, because in the countries that I have shown you, there were social consultations and talks which then led to coming up with plans. So this is a few-year perspective, and I hope that in a year or in 2 years I will meet with the representatives of public administration bodies and that we are able to talk. And even though we haven't started anything yet, then we will be able in some time to present a roadmap and to present the end of this journey. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I hope that I will be able to share some more detailed information during the next edition of the conference.